What if I told you that right now, as you watch this video, your behavior is already changing? Even a tiny sense of being observed can shift how you act. Most of us think our real self shows up when nobody's around. We assume that alone equals natural, honest, and productive. But the second you feel watched, something changes. Your body wakes up, your attention tightens, and your behavior becomes more deliberate. That shift isn't random. It's a real psychological effect, and it influences how you work, think, and perform. You actually have two versions of your performance. There's your relaxed, private mode, and then there's the version of you that shows up under observation. And here's the surprising part. The watched version of you may be closer to your peak than the one you call normal. Think about presentations, interviews, or moments when people are counting on you. You may feel nervous, but you also become sharper. You sit straighter. You think faster. You suddenly care more about every word and every move. For a long time, I thought my best work happened in total isolation. Headphones on, door closed, nobody around. But when I paid attention, I noticed something strange. Some of my best work happened when other people were nearby. This idea goes back to a famous discovery in 1924. It started inside a factory called Hawthorne Works. Researchers wanted to test a simple question. If they improved the lighting, would workers become more productive? At first, the answer seemed obvious. The lights got brighter, and productivity went up. But then things got weird. The researchers made the lighting worse, and productivity still went up. That made no sense. If better lighting helped, worse lighting should have hurt performance. So what was actually happening? The workers knew they were being observed. That was the real trigger. It wasn't the lighting, it was the awareness that someone was paying attention. That discovery changed everything. It suggested that observation itself can activate higher performance.
So those moments when you feel extra alert under pressure, that may not be your anxiety ruining your ability. It may be your ability finally switching on. The watched version of you might be your more activated self. I used to be proud of being a solo worker. I thought isolation was where I did my deepest, best work. But when I actually tracked my output, the truth was different. My clearest thinking often showed up when I wasn't alone. Live calls, shared work sessions, busy environments. Those were the moments when my mind seemed to click. The places I had labeled as distractions were sometimes the exact places where I performed better. That forced me to rethink everything. Once I stopped fighting that pattern and started using it, my productivity changed. And you can test this on yourself right now. Imagine yourself working alone in your room on an important project. Be honest, how do you usually sit, move, and focus? Maybe your posture drops. Maybe you check your phone. Maybe your breaks get longer than they should. Now, imagine your boss, mentor, or someone you deeply respect walks in and quietly watches you work. Feel that instant shift? Your spine straightens. Your focus sharpens. You stop drifting and start attacking the task. That transformation happens fast because your nervous system is changing state. Observation can raise alertness and engagement. Your mind starts organizing better. You become more intentional, more precise, and often more mentally present. Some research suggests working memory and attention can improve under the right kind of social pressure. In other words, your brain can level up. But most people treat that state like a problem. They avoid accountability because they assume pressure is always bad. So they hide in comfort. They keep goals private, avoid being seen, and choose the version of work that feels easier. But comfort is not always where your best performance lives. Sometimes comfort is just where your standards get blurry.
Public commitment changes that. When other people know what you said you do, your behavior becomes more serious. You don't just feel more motivated, your brain starts allocating more control, more discipline, and more focus to the task. You've probably been treating observation like kryptonite. But in the right form, it can actually be a superpower. The key is learning how to use it on purpose, and there are 3 parts that make it work. To understand why this matters so much, we need to go deeper, because this isn't just modern productivity advice, it's ancient wiring. For our ancestors, being watched by the tribe mattered. Competence wasn't just nice to have, it affected survival, status, and trust. When people were watching, performance had consequences. That meant your brain had a reason to become more alert. Do well, and you gained respect and protection. Do poorly, and the social cost could be real. That's why observation can feel intense. Psychologists call part of this evaluation apprehension, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. This pattern shows up in research, too. One of the classic examples came from cyclists. Riders often performed faster when riding with others than when riding completely alone. Even the presence of others changed output.
That finding was powerful because it showed something important. People don't only respond to competition, they respond to social presence. And it's not just cyclists. Similar patterns have shown up in games, skill tasks, and work environments. Sometimes the mere presence of another person pushes you to access better attention and better effort. Not fake effort, real effort. But there's a catch. Not every observer has the same effect on you. A random stranger seeing you scroll on your phone probably won't change much. Your brain doesn't read that as meaningful. But give that same task to someone whose opinion matters to you, and suddenly everything feels different. The stakes feel real. That's because meaningful observation matters more than generic observation. Your brain cares about context. This is where a lot of productivity advice misses the mark. It tells you to eliminate people, when the right people may be exactly what you need. So how do you actually engineer this effect instead of stumbling into it by accident? Here's the framework. First, let's talk about what doesn't work. Fake accountability looks productive, but it usually has no real power. Telling a coworker your goal in passing isn't enough. There's no meaningful involvement there.
Working next to someone who doesn't care about your outcome also won't do much. Presence alone is not the whole story. And generic groups where nobody knows your work often feel shallow. They create the appearance of accountability without the force of it. The first real step is identifying your performance triggers. Who naturally makes you want to step up? It could be a mentor, a respected colleague, a coach, or even a younger sibling you want to set an example for. The important thing is that their opinion matters. Once you know who that is, your system gets stronger. You stop guessing and start designing your environment around real psychological triggers. The second step is creating observation windows. Pick specific times when your best work happens under some form of observation. That might be a focused video call with an accountability partner. You're both working, but you know someone is there. It could also be a coffee shop where you're recognized and visible, not watched in a creepy way, just seen enough to stay switched on. Or it can be as simple as telling someone exactly what you'll finish in the next 90 minutes. Then you report back. The third step is stakes. Observation works better when the moment actually means something. Maybe your work will be reviewed. Maybe you'll discuss it afterward. Maybe you promised a clear result by a clear time. When feedback, discussion, or consequences are attached, performance rises. Your brain stops treating the task like a vague maybe. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Imagine a freelance graphic designer named Sarah.
Sarah was talented, but she struggled to finish projects on time. Working alone at home kept leading to slow starts and second guessing. She tried coffee shops, she tried co-working spaces, but nothing really clicked because the setup still felt impersonal. Then she started doing design sprints with her mentor. Twice a week, they got on a video call and worked in parallel. Her mentor wasn't constantly talking. The point wasn't advice every second. The point was meaningful presence. Within a few weeks, Sarah was moving faster and making stronger creative decisions. She wasn't magically more talented, she was more activated. That's the power of the right observer. The work becomes real in a different way. And interestingly, creativity didn't disappear under pressure. It improved because her mind stayed more engaged. So remember the structure: the right people, the right windows, and real stakes. That's how you turn observation into a tool. The most effective people aren't always the most naturally disciplined. Sometimes they've simply built better systems around human psychology. But there is one huge mistake that can ruin all of this. And if you get it wrong, you can perform worse than if you were alone. The fatal mistake is trying to fake pressure. Your brain is smarter than that. If observation feels controlling, invasive, or artificial, your system reacts differently. Instead of sharpening you, it starts stressing you out.
That's when performance drops. You become clumsy, scattered, and overly self-conscious. This is why bad accountability can hurt. Not all pressure is helpful pressure. Consider the difference between a coach and a micromanager. One pulls your best out of you, and the other makes you tense up. That's why coffee shops often help people focus. The observation is gentle, anonymous, and non-controlling. And that's why some open offices feel exhausting. Attention feels like monitoring instead of support. The worst version is shame-based accountability. If your whole system depends on feeling awful when you fail, your brain starts treating the task like a threat. Threat kills clarity. Supportive pressure is different. It keeps your dignity intact while still raising your standards. So the goal is not to create fear. The goal is to create meaningful, respectful observation that helps your best self come online. And here's the big insight. Your peak performance is probably not something you need to invent. It already exists. You've already seen flashes of it in your life. During presentations, big conversations, or high-stakes moments, another version of you appears. That version isn't fake. It's not some temporary superpower. It's part of you, and the right conditions help bring it out.
So here's what I want you to do. Pick one important task you've been delaying this week. Now, text someone whose opinion matters to you. Tell them exactly what you're going to finish and by when. Make it specific. Not, I'll work on it later, but I'll finish the draft by 3 p.m. or I'll set up my budget by Sunday evening. Then send a quick update when it's done. A photo, a message, a screenshot, something real. And if you want this to become a system, use the 3-2-1 accountability loop. 3 important tasks, 2 people who will check in, 1 report time. At the end of the week, review what worked. Keep what sharpened your focus and adjust what felt forced. The Hawthorne effect is not just a psychological fact, it's a mirror. Stop hiding from observation. Start engineering it. And you may finally meet the version of yourself that's been there all along. Subscribe for more psychology that actually works, and I'll see you in the next one.